Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage, and today we're going to work on a Mustang, but not this one. So stick with me through the intro, and I'll be back. Alright guys, so if you seen my last video on my 66, I had trouble getting something under the front end of it, and it's kind of fought me the whole way. But if you caught my short, you seen that I got something under it. Well, it's now in here in the shop, and Daisy's, doing Daisy things. So it was not an easy task, and following this clip will be us moving into the shop. So it's in here. I'll flip the camera around here in just a moment, and then I'll be back. Daisy wants to remind everybody that she extended that 10% off all our merchandise through December the 10th. So make sure you check that out, because she needs some more treats and she really wants everybody to have one of her shirts. So guys, Daisy's in here checking it out, and compared to sitting next to the 65, this thing looks like a total pile of doo-doo. But what I done, I took two hubs and welded them to a piece of black iron and set it between the control arm mounts. That just allowed the car to roll enough and get in the shop. Unfortunately, I didn't think nothing about centering said tube, so while I'm moving the car, it is moved quite a bit, but it is in the shop, so that's going to be the start of this video. So we got a lot to do to get caught up here. But I gotta get some car dollies and get this thing sitting on something a little more semi-permanent. So guys, I didn't expect no less other than a fight. Hopefully all the wasps that were living in this thing are, now on the other side of things. So Daisy is thoroughly checking everything out, and we'll go from there. And alright, it's about par for the course. I forgot the car dollies. So we're just going to put it up on jack stands like we did 65. So let's get that in progress, and then we can go a little further. And alright, the car is on 4 jack stands on subframes. This car does have frame connectors. Try to find a flat spot in a couple places to compare measurements. As you see, that was on 0. This one's on 0. So the car's pretty well squared up. Daisy's up here checking stuff out. New car, new place to lay. Ain't it, huh? You just want to go outside where it's cold. So next thing to do, I need to get this front axle I made out. And like I said guys, this thing's just a piece of black iron. Just kind of super simple. Took 2 old hubs, a couple old trailer wheels, and pretty much just set it in the control arm saddle for the lower control arm. So let's see where we get from here. So got that axle I made out from under it. Pretty much this thing just, it's just a heavy piece of old black wall pipe. And I just spotted some hubs to it. Just enough to make it roll. So at this point, the car's square. It's on jack stands, just like we did when we set this one up. Obviously there'll have to be a couple added here in the front and start doing some work up here, but right now it's pretty level and even. So we need to start getting some pieces off this car, because you can't build a car with it still mostly assembled. And You really don't need to be doing welding and grinding with the glass in it. The sides can roll down, but you know, and you can cover your vent windows up if you didn't remove them. But the windshield and that back glass, they gotta go. We gotta get this hood off here, which luckily it don't have no hinges, and as you can see, it's just stuck on here up under the little weather strip tabs, and it's lashed in the front. So we'll get the hood off of it, and we'll see if we can't get these fenders off, and we'll go from there. Now the fender's off, we have a little better look at what we got. So first thing I wanted to do was come up here in this area. I pulled some seam sealer off with my fingers. Got a little crusty stuff in this area, but not no holes through or anything. The end of the cowl looks pretty solid. Look it up in there. I know y'all won't be able to see it, but it looks fairly solid up in there. So I need to get that other fender off. We need to get these inner fender aprons off. Those rubbers on these are hard as a rock, which I'd imagine they're original. So it looks like this car was painted some kind of pinky purple color, I guess, before, or maybe that's the primer under the white bleeding through, and it's kind of gained some kind of weird tone. But the white, the Wimbledon white, is the factory white. That's what's in the floors in here. But I guess it could be overspray from the interior colors, because it's like a dark red, dark metallic red, but where it's faded up here, it almost resembles what's in our door jambs. So still got a bunch of stuff to take off, and we'll get it done unless we get it done. It's been a couple hours at this point. I've got a pile of bolts and a pile of dirt in the floor, but I've got most of the stuff off the front clip. So it's a good time to flip this around and kind of show you what you need to look for. Once again, in one of these cars that we've done went over in the 65, but 66 here is just a little bit different. And we have some better representations of some things that could or could not cause you issues in the future. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with the way the car is structurally. The cowl looks actually pretty good in this car. It's got some pine needles and leaves up in it, but I've moved some of them around and it looks pretty solid. And initially I looked up underneath this car really good and I didn't see any holes, so I felt pretty good about it. But there will be some things that we may have to address, and it may be one of these that we may have to pull the upper cowl on anyway, just for some cleanup and for some rust protection. So let me flip it around. So at this point, it don't really look any different than it did after I took the fenders off, but I've done a lot of stuff. I've took a lot of small things off, like the spring covers and the shock mounts, the battery tray, which this car is unusually solid in this area. It's just got that little bit of rust and a couple little small spots that could be patched pretty easy. I took a couple of brackets and stuff off. Like I said before, this car had been blasted, but they didn't take some of the stuff off and, you know, done the thing. And that's a big, big no-no when you sandblast a car. You have to take a car all the way apart because you get all this stuff, and some of this is dirt from the years, but some of it's sand and some of it's nasty stuff. But, you know, this stuff just gets in these areas, guys, and just, especially sand, it'll get up in there and turn into cake. It'll cake, and then you'll have issues, especially in areas, you know, like in here, in your cowl, in these areas. And plus, if you're going to go as far as blasting the car, you're going to get all this old flaky seam sealer and mess all off the car, because it doesn't do nothing but harbor rust up under it and cause the car to rot out. But everything on this car so far looks pretty decent. And I want to see if I can't get some light up here in this cowl, and I'll see if I can show you kind of what you deal with in here. The reason why these cowls rot out, you can see those pine needles up in there. Those pine needles just aren't right in that area. They're also, I don't know if this will work. They're also up around the top of the top hat in this cowl in here. And what that does, it holds moisture, and that's what ultimately rots your cowl out. This car looks pretty solid. Obviously, it's, you know, like this in there, but I don't see no ginormous holes. Same way with the frame rails under the bumper brackets and stuff. There's no holes in them. So, same way with the driver's side of the cowl, where our 65 was all rotted out here, other than some sand and some funky stuff built up. You know, it's pretty solid up in here, and Daisy's over here inspecting again. But I don't know if I got enough light in there for you to see in there, but we have more leaves, and if you look at this cowl, you can see how that cowl floor goes down and then up. And that's one of the things that does not help these cars with rust. But I was talking about that seam sealer, guys. If you don't take all this stuff off, so you just slab some seam sealer over top of this, you're just going to have issues later. You know, this stuff after 60 years is, you know, worse for wear. And it's tar-based stuff, and it's about gone. So everything over here looks pretty good. Might have a little questionable spot right there, but tapping around on everything looks pretty good. And amazingly, the front structure is in very good shape. It's even supporting the weight of Daisy. Squeeze, squeeze. So guys, yet it's another day, and we still need to finish taking some parts off this 66. And a lot of you may be wondering, well, why are you tearing it down so far? Because, guys, to build anything, this is what you need to do. Unless the car is already a good car. You want to prevent any of this hidden rust. You want to be able to go in there and treat it. Or go in there and have the whole car blasted again. Which is most likely an option for this car. Because the cleaner you get the bones, the better base you start with, the better car you end up with less money in it, if that makes any sense. So, like I said before, I hardly gave anything for this roller body shell. So, no matter what we do with it, our options are wide open. I know a lot of you have been kind of wanting to see it restored. Well, this is a 206-cylinder 3-speed manual car. Not a whole lot of fun in that. So I, however, have been looking for a home for the turbo 306 cylinder. Or I may put the LT headed Cleveland in it. I don't know yet. There's a lot of different routes we can go. I've got a few different engine combinations floating around that could go in this car. You know, just like I talked about doing the body swap with the SVO, or doing another Fox body suspension, or something along that lines. And all those are viable possibilities. So you just let me know down in the comments below what you would like to see. I know a lot of people would like to see a fastback conversion on it, and that is a possibility in the future. But first we need to get the car apart. We need to assess exactly what we have, and then we begin a plan of going from there. And like I've said several times in a couple of videos, I've kind of hinted around, there's some big things going on in the background, guys. Especially with this car and with the 65 that's behind me. So we're fixing to start back on this car, and we're fixing to dig deep on this 66. So what I need you guys to do to make sure this stuff happens is engage with these videos, which means like the videos, share them, you know, comment down below. Let's get these videos up on the YouTube algorithm and get them the views that they deserve. And of course, we had Daisy jump on the car, so the car's wiggling around. That way, we can actually do something in 2025. Yeah. That's why it looked like an earthquake to you guys. She's up here jumping around like a bunny rabbit. So, if you could help me in that way, I would greatly appreciate it. So, enough with that. Let's see if we can get this dilapidated heater box out of this car. I'm going to show you the easy way to take it out. And this heater box in this car is disintegrating, so I'm not really worried about saving a whole lot of it. These things are available reproduction, at least the housings of them. So we don't want to damage things like the blower motor, the controls, or, you know, the cables and stuff to go like that. So let me show you the easiest way to get the heater hoses out of the firewall, and I'm not talking about taking them loose under the dash. So follow along with me. So guys, you get some of these old rock hard heater hoses, and you don't want to find them through these firewalls. The easiest way on these cars, just cut them off. Yeah, you just see that break, didn't you? Yep. The easiest thing you can do is just cut them off here at the firewall. Right here, and then when you take your bolts loose, you can pull that stuff out down into the floor without having to fight with a big old long snake of hoses. And if you're fortunate enough for your wiring harness to still have the original style connectors, the blower motor just unplugs from your harness that would be under your hood. I've done remove the under hood harness. So other than that, you got these 4 bolts right here, and then we'll move on to the inside of the car. And also, get you a box. Everything you take off your car that you're stripping, put it in a box. Or at least bag it and mark it. A lot of people do that. I'm pretty good with memory of where things go, so I generally just put everything in a box, and then I'll dig through it later and clean it up as needed. Once you get inside, you're just going to give this thing just a light tug, and it'll come out. Your cowl seal up here sometimes, it sits on top of this top paddle stick, and it's also a good sign that we don't have a bunch of rust caked on it. But this heater box in this car has been absolutely destroyed and botched up over time. So other than that, you got a couple of plugs here, and they're plenty long enough to reach to get them loose. And then your cables right here, you're just going to take these loose. There's 2 bolts right here. Your cables come off, and this box will pull right out. So that was a trick. How many noticed I didn't take the cowl, the heater box bracket off? There's a reason for that. Yes, there is a bolt there. It's a 3/8. This card heater box was already broke right there, and I seen it when I looked up under the dash. So I skipped over to see if any of you would notice. So let me flip it around. We'll have our first look at the passenger side lower cowl. And obviously I got Daisy creeping up behind me too. So guys, you see the rust hole in the floor? That usually coincides with a rotten lower cowl. Yeah, look at that little solid puppy. Or at least it is on the bottom side, which don't mean it's compromised, not compromised on the inside, but it's already looking pretty good there. And that little bracket I mentioned, guys, goes right here. And this goes to the base sheet cowl. Just if your heater box is in good shape, don't forget to take this little guy loose. This one was already kind of soft and cracked up. And at the glove box, I found this old school AM/FM converter. It probably still works because it looks like it's in pretty darn good shape. Pretty neat, huh? Alright guys, I was going to put off taking the doors off for a little later, but I decided just to go ahead and do it. Since we have to do some metal work in here, it would just be easier for me to transverse the shop, you know. Considering this thing's already painted, it'd be easy for me to transverse when I can just walk straight up to it without a door in the way. But the reason why you want to take all this stuff off, even on a car that's as decent as this one, is if you look behind the hinges here, we get some pretty heavy pitting right here. Now keep in mind guys, most of the time they put these cars together, there was no paint or anything under these areas. So remember what I always say in my other videos, rust never sleeps. But we need to address this before it gets any worse. Just like that little bracket right there, it's pretty flaky behind it. So I just went ahead and took them off. It'll make the metal working floors a lot easier. The factory doors weigh about twice what a Taiwanese door weighs, like those. So they're pretty hefty, and I do recommend you use a helper if you're going to do that. You can't get them off by yourself if the fenders are off. You know, you got to have fenders off anyway to get these bolts, but you do not want to lose these plates right here. And as you can see, even though they're galvanized, look like they're galvanized, they're pretty crusty themselves. And I'm not going to say rusty, but they're crusty. Same behind the hinges over here. Same behind the hinge over here. It also lets us get up in these areas and address anything up here in them. And repeat the process there. That'll let us just make a really clean area as we go forward. One thing I am going to leave in this car for right now is the quarter windows, until I get the quarter windows back in 65. These rear regulators are kind of tricky, and if you watched the video where I took them out of the 65, you'll understand. But they're really easy to screw up, and it's always nice to have a road map that's already together. So these are going to stay in here for now, and probably one of the last pieces I remove. But we still got a bunch of stuff to take off. I gotta get the column out of it. I've got to get the cluster out of it, the radio, the heater controls, all our dash switches, you know, the pedal assemblies, and all that stuff. Because if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it as bright as I can. And even if we do build a race car, I still want it to be right and be nice. So Daisy is wanting to go outside, even though it is very, very windy out there. Very, very not nice. You tell them I'm being mean to you, that you want to go outside. And apparently being mean is just letting her out the door unsupervised and letting her do whatever. I just want her to stay safe, and that's the easiest way to do it, is to keep her inside right now, especially it being cold weather. We all know how cats like to go up in engine bays, and there's people coming in and out the shop. I don't want her to get up in somebody's engine bay and then end up getting chopped up by a fan, or, you know, getting hurt somewhere. So I have took her out several times, so she's had more than enough outside time today so far. So let's take some more pieces off. The fun stuff nobody ever wants to do, and that's take apart this stuff under the dash. Now, I know it's a little out of whack and you can't see what I'm doing up above, but this car has an aftermarket tachometer on the steering column. Little Sun Tac right here, or Sun Pro in this case, which is probably from the 90s. So we're just going to go in here and remove this. I'm sure it is probably still a good unit. We just got to get it out of the way. I'm going to try to cut these wires as long as I can, because I'm going to save this, because I like vintage tachometers, and while 90s stuff is very expensive, I would like to have it. And I did take the parking brake assembly loose. There'll be 2 bolts under the hood area right there, and your bolts that hold your vent bracket up right here. The Phillips head screws, they hold the top part on. These things can be quite the bear, especially if the car's sat out any amount of time or the cowl leaks. You start to get rust on them. You definitely want to be able to get this old firewall pad out, because they too cause rust. Because these cars, the paint they had on them was lacquer. Anytime lacquer does not do a good job of keeping moisture out. So, just like the outside of the car where they primed it after it was blasted, you can see it was rusted through. The same thing happens with lacquer primer or lacquer paint over time, especially when exposed to dampness or condensation. You're going to get rust. What I'm hoping for here is that we don't have to put a whole toe board in this car, because as you remember from our 65 series, that there is absolutely no good aftermarket toe boards available for these cars, and they all fit like garbage. So I want to try to, if possible, save as much of this as I can. And I'm just going to pull this firewall pad out, because we're not going to save it. As you see, by design, these cars were designed to fail, because these little metal push pins hold your firewall pad on. They're literally just push their holes in the firewall, and they get wet, that moisture seeps behind the pad and causes this up here that you see. I do see some pinholes through up through here, but the metal is not soft, so it might be something we can save. I'll just go in here and do some small patches on. But what I'm working forward here to do is to get this vent hat out, our under dash vent, so I can access the bottom of the cowl on this side. After all these years, some of these connectors are not too fun to get apart. The wiring harness in this car is actually in pretty decent shape and would be usable with a little cleanup work and some retaping. It doesn't appear to be hacked all to pieces like most of them. So we just got to work on getting as much stuff out of the way as we can, and then we can move forward. All right, this is something I didn't cover in another Mustang video. Steering column removal. Guys, the steering columns on these are pretty simple to remove. you're going to need to pull the steering wheel off. Up under the dash right here, there'll be 2 1/2-inch nuts. You take those loose. Okay. You're going to unplug the column down there. And what happens is this column is a press fit over a steering box down here. There's a seal right here, and this seal gets hard and makes this hard to come off. So you want to take a long pry bar and get down in there and pry this column up. In doing so, you will release this little lock collar, so to say, or upper bearing race right here. You don't want to lose that, so make sure you put it in your bolt box. And then the steering column too will pull up out. Just like that. It's pretty simple to remove. Like I said, it's got that rubber seal on that side. Obviously, you get your rubber seal at the base of the firewall. Depending on the condition of your firewall seal, you may need to take it loose, but this one was junk, so I'm going to put the column in our keep pile of things, because I do not want to discard that. But that then leaves us with a solid steering shaft sticking up here. And this goes down to your box. That's why a lot of times in these old cars, when you get in a severe front end collision, they would talk about the steering wheel would kill you, because the steering wheel or steering column does not collapse, and it could totally be a thing. This steering box don't feel like it has any play in this car. However, it don't sound very good. It probably took apart and cleaned. I will not be using the factory steering box, so that's why I decided to go ahead and pull the column. It also makes it easier to get the gauge cluster out and a lot of this other dash stuff up under here. So my next thing is I'm going to pull the steering box off. I'm not going to show you guys that, but it's pretty much something that's got to be done with the motor out. At least makes it a lot easier to fight with that shaft. If you got headers, it's definitely not going to come out. So you got these 3 bolts right here. Obviously, if you had steering linkage, you would have the pitman arm sticking down there. It would have to be disconnected. But you take these 3 bolts out. The steering column's going to feed. Steering box assembly is going to feed out in this direction, and then it'll slide out of the car. So I'm trying to pick up on some of that stuff that I didn't necessarily cover in the 65 video, because I didn't pull it that far down. I would have liked to, but due to his budget constraints, I kind of tried to stay between these lines. So steering column super easy to remove. Steering box not so much if you got a motor in the car. You might be able to snake it out, but I highly doubt it. 6-cylinder car, you're good. So let me get the steering box off of it, and then I'll be back, guys. All right, guys, I'm about ready to the point I need to take the windshield out. It'll just make me taking the dash pad and stuff out easier. The windshield's going to have to come out of it anyway, because you can see the seal, it's garbage. So I'm going to show you an easy way to get the windshield out. I did cover that on the 65, but this seal is much harder, and it's probably the original Ford one. So I'm going to try to set y'all up here to show you. It may be a little hard for me to show the whole thing, but basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a razor knife with a sharp blade. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to be careful not to really hit the glass, okay? But I'm going to go in here at like a 45-degree angle and let this blade follow the glass down. And you can hear the blade glide on the glass on the way down. And what that does, that'll cut this seal. And I'm going to go in here around the outside edge. And I'm just going to go down through here. All the way to the bottom. And what that'll do, it'll allow me to take and just peel this seal back past the edge of the glass. It also makes sure that we don't do any damage. But you gotta be real careful, guys. Somebody has went in here and siliconed around this glass and stuff. So it makes it a little harder. But when you go in there, we're just gonna let that razor blade ride that edge of that glass down. But we don't want this blade to be pointed downward when we do it. We want that blade to stay flat till we get all the way around. But it's just a way I found that works. And it works well for me. Because once you get it cut, this windshield will pretty much just pull out. And don't be afraid if you don't think you got it good and cut the first time to do it again. That just allows you to remove that outer ridge that actually holds the glass in. And once you get at that point, you can see it flex up like this. Generally, I won't cut the bottom. I'll just cut the tops and the sides. And then this windshield will push up and come out. So the windshield in this car was in decent shape, so I'm going to save it. While it's not perfect, it is totally reusable for what we're going to do. All right, and the big thing about taking these windows out, guys, it lets you make sure you're not going to have no rot under it. And these are held in with butyl tape, not just the seal. If you put it in with just the seal, you'll have a leak. But you need to at least have some butyl rubber sealer in between that gasket and the thing. As you can see, this had quite a bit. As long as it don't protrude past your window trim, you'll be okay. But what it does do is make a big nasty cleanup for later. But I took the windshield out because I need to take it out anyway, because we're going to have to address anything around through here. And it also makes it easier to get some of these trim screws out and deal with things down in here. Yes, I know you can access these through the top of the dash pad, but we're going to have to go this far anyway. It just makes it a little easier. This little piece of trim just covers the window rubber. And it's totally an optional little piece. I'll show you why here in just a moment. It does help hold the front of the dash pad down, especially as it warps as it ages. But as you can see, as the dash pad warps, it also bends the trim. But if you're doing dash pad delete, you don't need it because you'll have a nice clean black line. But if you're doing dash pad, you definitely got to have it. So while this pad's not in horrible shape, it's totally kind of usable like it is for, you know, a driver or a rat rod flavor of things. We're not going to use it. So once you get trim off, your windshield rubber just pulls right out. You see our original paint right there compared to this right here. This is also a Wimbledon white car. That's what we painted 65 with. Alright, I got all the dash pad perimeter screws out. There's a bunch of Phillips head screws here, guys, around the cluster and glove box. Get your front trim up here. And a lot of people may think that you got the dash pad loose at that point, that it will pull right out. Well, it won't, because right here you got two studs, one here and one here. Now this one only has one nut, so that means somebody's been in here before. So to get the dash pad off, we gotta simply remove this one nut. It's a 3/8. like I said, guys, I took the windshield out. This makes it easier for me to show you and easier for me to do it. But definitely resist the urge to just grab and janks on stuff. The dash pad's still going to be stuck because they stick to the dash metal. And most of the time they're at this point anyway, you're not really worried about destroying it anyways. They're usually, like I said, they're usually junk at this point. Maybe that'll help somebody trying to remove their dash pad. Got lots of dirt up in here. Whew. So I'm sure a lot of you are curious after the other side of the cowl, did we win the windshield cowl lottery on the classic Mustang? Well guys, I've got everything pulled apart and I'll show you what I have found. So here's our driver's side cowl vent. You can see we've had some rats and things living in here. And we got some sand where the car was blasted and dirt and things. This thing literally weighs like 10 pounds and it's packed solid in there. But our cowl itself, well, showing some rust around the edges and some crusty stuff, it actually looks pretty decent up in there. Obviously it's got some crust on it. I do not feel any holes. I poked around on it with a screwdriver and everything seems pretty decent. However, it is going to require some extensive rust treatment and a ton of cleaning to make sure that it is in fact solid. Now, do I expect some pinholes to pop up? Possibly. The big thing is we're at this point, we don't have no giant holes. And like I said before, even if we have to remove the upper cowl, we may be able to rust treat it and just attach the upper cowl back, as long as we remove it carefully. Now, I may go about it in a little different way this time. I may not remove the whole upper cowl. I may just open the sides of it up. Just depending on how things keep going, guys. Because so far, the bones of this car are looking really, really good. And I've still not made my mind up on what route we're going. But so far, so good. Forget about it all being sand in that cowl vent. That is what that is. That's sand where they had blasted outside the car. And it had gotten damp. Now keep in mind this car has been in the shop for a few days at this point. And all this sand and old paint and stuff that's all combined, it turned into a cake, as you seen, and had that cowl, you know, the vent over there plugged. I just dumped it out here on the floor because I'm going to sweep it up anyway. Do not blast your car, guys, all together, please. Because that right there is the worst thing you can do. And Daisy's checking out some more things too at this point. She's also reminded me this video is probably getting a little bit long. So guys, I think this is going to be about the close of this video. I have done a bunch of work for the past week trying to get this thing in the shop, and we finally got it in here, and I've got it stripped down to a point where we can kind of assess exactly what we have. And that is a big important thing when starting, especially a classic project car, because if you're going to go down this far, or to the point where this car was, where they blasted it, you need to go all the way down and blast all the stuff, or take care of all the rust that's actually still hidden. Taking the stuff off the outside of the car does absolutely nothing for the bones of the car. So I'm going to work on, like I said, I'm going to work on trying to get the rest of this stuff off this car. I'm going to reach out to a couple of guys and see if they can't help me out with some mobile sandblasting stuff. And hopefully that will work out pretty well. I do have some super huge plans for 2025, and I'm not ready to tell you all about them quite yet, but they do involve this 66 Mustang, and they do involve the 65 that you're currently sitting on. I know everybody is ready to see the 65 again, and I'll flip the camera around. But we're back ready to start on it. And I've got some big things in the works for it too to help him out. So hopefully everything will work out, and hopefully you guys will decide to come along with ride with me. And all you have to do is hit that like button, share these videos with your friends, and become a subscriber. It's absolutely free, and all you do is click a button, and then my videos come up and you see more classic Mustang content. If you are a subscriber, I greatly appreciate you guys. And I do look forward to your comments down below also, and I'm sure Daisy enjoys her extra treats. So until the next video, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.